Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Rena. I should say good afternoon to you, being 2 hours ahead in Israel. I can probably actually say welcome back to a lot of you here today, because when Rena presented to us about 3 months ago about general memory improvement tips and tricks, we had such an overwhelmingly positive response and so many requests for a follow-up session that I'm sure many of you here today are back actually for a second time. So for those of you who haven't met Rena, Rena is a geriatric social worker and a memory coach. She was head of an Alzheimer's unit and now I believe works for an anti-aging clinic and runs her own memory improvement courses, both in person, Corona permitting, and online. And we're now getting a taster of Rena's course. So last session, we focused on tips and tricks to help keep generally cognitively healthy and to exercise our memory. And today, Rena's going to help us deal with the focusing skills and avoid those, should I say, frequent situations when one goes to the fridge or to another room to do something and then arrives there with no idea what one was meant to do next. So Rena, I hand over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. It's so nice to be back with this community again. And maybe one day I'll be able to even make it to England in person. I hope soon one day. But thank you for joining me today. And thank you for having me back. So yeah, today I'm going to talk about what I call the T's of focus, TEAS. We're going to use that acronym. I'm going to share my screen with you in a minute after I give the introduction. A lot of times we blame our memory on what's actually not memory. So the good news is that when you walk into a room and say, what am I here for? It's really not memory. It's really focus, attention, distraction. And I hear this from everyone because this happens to everyone. You go to the fridge, you open the fridge, you can't remember what you came for. And we think it's our memory, but it's actually not. So that's the good news. And there's more good news. The even better news is there's things you can do to improve your focus and concentration that are going to improve your memory. So, and these are like really fun, easy, practical tips that really, really work. I've been doing this webinar many times over and people are like, thank you, this is so helpful. So let me share my screen. And you can take notes. It's not that many notes. It's very easy to remember because, no, you don't want to see that. I think you want to see this. Okay. It's very easy to remember because it's an acronym. So this is called What Did I Come to the Fridge For? And we're talking about how to improve focus to improve memory. So you want to remember T's. Like I know in England, you drink a lot of tea, right? You have like T's, TEAS. And herbal tea is healthy for you. So you're just going to remember T's, TEAS. And I'm going to go through and tell you what each of these letters stand for that are going to help you improve your focus. And I'm going to give you a lot of very practical examples. And I'm going to normalize a lot of what's going on for you and explain where it's coming from. So the T stands for task, one task at a time. We want to stop multitasking. Now, this is a big one because I'm going to bet that a lot of you try to do more than one thing at a time, right? And what happens when you do? You quote unquote, you forget something else. So example, you cooking something on the stove and the phone rings. So you walk away to answer the phone and what happens? You burn whatever you're cooking. Or someone asks you to do something and then someone knocks on your door, you go open the door and you're basically all your focus got distracted onto another task. Now you think you can do 2 tasks at a time very well. But guess what? Our brains actually cannot multitask. We can't do 2 tasks at the very same second. We can do them fast, one after another. We call that sequential processing. We process information sequentially, which means like in a sequence, one after another. But we actually can't do 2 things at the very same second. Now, when we were younger, we might have been trained that if you could multitask, you're more efficient, you're more productive. But the research today is saying something different. It's saying that when we multitask, it trips up our brain. When we multitask, they did research in the workplace that shows that people that multitask actually made double the amount of mistakes. So let's say a secretary who's trying to do a million things at once, which was part of her job, right? If you were a secretary, that was part of your job. But what they found in the workplace was that people that tried to multitask made double the amount of mistakes. So really, what's going to help us focus, remember, be more accurate, and feel less stressed is doing one thing at a time. Now, this might sound like, oh yeah, I know that, but do you do it? My guess is that you still try to multitask way too much. Another interesting thing about multitasking is it actually temporarily reduces your IQ by 15 points. Temporarily reduces your IQ by 15 points. What do we do when we try to do this and that and that and that all at the same time? We're sort of like taking our mind and like stressing it, which is not good for us. And it makes us less creative. Like if I'm trying to think creatively, if you want a creative answer for me, don't ask me when I'm trying to serve supper, right? Or don't ask me when I'm reading a book. I'm in the middle of reading a book. Don't ask me for something creative. So those of us that struggle with this all our lives, like some people when they're younger, they can actually get away with multitasking more than when we get older. Because when we get older, one of the things that does change as we age is that it gets harder to pay attention to more than one thing at a time. So if you're complaining about this more as you age, that's normal because it gets harder. So it doesn't mean there's something wrong with your memory. It means you need to stop multitasking. Okay. My sister was in her 50s and she called me and said, I don't know what's wrong with my memory, Rena. I can't remember anything. And I said, how many things are you trying to do at once? 100 or 200? She's one of those like ADD people that's doing a million things at once. And I said to her, you need to stop multitasking. And she said, I can't. I'm too busy. I'm too this. I'm too that. I can't. And I said to her, fine. But I'm telling you that what you're feeling, the stress and the what you're going to call your memory is going, I'm telling you it's from multitasking. Slow down. Do things more mindfully. When you do things more mindfully and you give it attention, you have a much better chance of remembering it. Okay? This is the reason that there's a very, very high fine for talking on the phone while driving. I don't know what it is in England, but here in Israel, if you are caught talking on the phone while driving, it's 1,000 shekel fine and 8 points on your license. You know why? Because your brain cannot drive a car and talk on the phone while holding the phone at the same time. Now, according to the law here, at least, if you're on speakerphone, then it's not illegal. But for me, in my research and what I do, it is, even if you're not holding the phone, it is still very dangerous to be talking on the phone while driving. Because why? You are having a virtual conversation with the person you're talking to. You're imagining the person you're talking to, right? So your brain is where? Talking to someone. It is not focused on what's right in front of your eyes. So as far as I'm concerned, talking on the phone while driving is dangerous whether you're holding the phone or not. And then the question that everyone asks is, well, what's the difference between that and if there's a person sitting next to me talking to me while I'm driving? So the answer to that is when there's someone sitting next to you while you're driving, it's not a virtual conversation anymore because they're right there. It's live, it's in person, it's real. You don't have to imagine anything. So it takes less attention to talk to the person sitting next to you than if you're on the phone. However, what happens if you're driving and you're not sure which direction to go and there's someone talking to you? What do? You say, wait, be quiet for 1 second so I could figure out where I'm going, right? Because then you need more concentration power. So that person has to be quiet so you can think. So there are tasks that require less cognition and more cognition, right? I can wash the dishes and listen to a shiur or a class or a lecture while I'm washing the dishes because washing dishes does not take that much brain power. But if you test me on the details of that lecture afterwards, and I was doing something while listening to the lecture, I am not going to remember as many details as if I were not washing the dishes while listening to the lecture, right? Because the more attention you pay to something, the higher the chance of remembering it. Now, we're human and we like to get a lot done. But what we need to realize is that in the long run, we will be more efficient if we use our memories properly by focusing on what we're doing at one task at a time than the short run. Like the short run, we feel like right now, if I could do a lot, I get a lot done. But what do I end up with? I end up with a stressed brain, forgetting that I have something cooking, or forgetting that I told someone that I'm going to meet them at this time because I was doing something else, so I made that appointment. So in the long run, we're going to be more efficient, more calm, and more focused, and have a better memory if we stop multitasking. So when people always complain to me and say, Rena, I can't stop multitasking, I'm too busy. And I say to them, I know you feel that by doing a lot at once, you're accomplishing more. Really, by being more mindful and paying attention to every task you're doing and doing one task at a time, you're going to end up being more efficient and more productive. So then, sometimes, so what I say is that there are times in life where it's very, very hard to do one task at a time. If you have a bunch of children or grandchildren talking to you at the same time, it's very hard to not multitask, right? If you have a couple kids talking to you and it's like, woo, I don't know who to answer first, right? So what I always tell my kids is, I can only hear one of you at a time. So who wants to talk first? Because if I have 3 kids talking to me at once, I can't focus. So I say, I can only hear one of you at a time. Who wants to go first? And I will hear each of you. So that's what we have to do with the tasks that come up. One thing at a time, finish that and move on. Unless it's a very big task, like if it's a big project we're working on, then obviously you do one segment and then maybe go on to another task. But there's a saying, when you're always online, you're always distracted, right? If you have like a million windows open, on your computer, and you're clicking back and forth between the windows, like a lot of us do, right? When you're always online, you're always distracted. And that, unfortunately, is one of the pitfalls today of the technology and the world we live in, where people are always on their phones, or always checking notifications, or always. So that is, when Shabbos comes, it's like that 25-hour oasis bliss where there's nothing beeping at you. There's no phones ringing. There's no Facebook notification. There's no WhatsApp messages. Shabbos is such a saving grace in that way. I'm sure you guys feel the same way. But technology today has made us much more distracted. So we need technology. It has a lot of pluses and benefits, but we also have to realize that it's really, really, really distracting us. So that's the T. The T is task. One task at a time, as much as possible, whenever possible. What goes along with that is doing things mindfully. So instead of just eating breakfast while checking your phone or reading the newspaper, and then someone's going to say, what did you eat for breakfast? And you're going to say, oh no, I can't remember what I ate for breakfast. And then you're going to get nervous that you're getting dementia, right? But really, you were not paying attention to what you were eating because you were checking your phone or reading a newspaper. So again, when you do things more mindfully, you have a much better chance of actually remembering what you did, or that you did, or how you ate, or what you ate. And mindfulness is a very popular topic these days, because we're so distracted and we have such a hard time, like just sitting quietly and just doing one thing at a time and being with what we're doing, being present with the people that we're talking to, right? That, phone in our hands all the time. Just be present, be mindful of who you're talking to, when you're talking to them. We all feel so much more loved and validated when you give me your full attention and you're not trying to do a million things at a time when I'm talking to you, right? So it's one task at a time, living more mindfully, paying attention to what you're doing. That's all going to improve your memory. Now the E, let's go on to the E. By the way, if anyone has questions, you can type them in the chat, and I'll when I finish this talk, I will answer questions. So if you think of something that you don't want to forget, type it in the chat and I'll go through the questions at the end. And I'll also give you a chance to ask live questions at the end. Okay, so E, build a conducive environment. E stands for environment. What happens when we try to either maybe you have to write an article, or maybe you need to fill out some important documents. What happens when there's a lot of noise in the background, or when the lighting is not good in your room, or when there's like a lot of mess on your desk? Can you concentrate on what you're doing? I can't. So our environment affects how we learn, how we take in information. So if you go to a lecture and you can't even hear because the environment is too noisy, you're not going to be able to remember that shiur or that lecture because you couldn't even hear it properly. So I tell people, when they have a hard time paying attention or remembering classes, sit in the front so that you really can see the person, so you can hear the person, so that you're not distracted by all the people sitting in front of you. So your environment, if you make it conducive to learning and remembering, it will help you. So if my desk is a huge mess and I can't even think straight, am I going to be able to focus on what I have to write or what I have to do? No. If there's like music playing and someone knocking on the door and the phone ringing and the dog barking and I'm trying to concentrate on a lecture I'm listening to, the environment is not conducive to me learning that information and remembering it. So our environment is, the distractions, the hearing, like the auditory, what are we hearing? The noise, the lights, if it's very dim lighting and you're trying to read and remember something, are you going to be able to, if the light's dim? No, our light, all these things affect how we take in information and learn and remember. So our environment, we want it to be conducive. Okay, so that's the E. Okay, so someone asked a great question. I'm gonna answer this now because it has to do with what I'm saying now. Someone just typed in, is this advice the same for those who are forgetful because of ADHD? Absolutely. This is really helpful for people with ADHD because if you know you're ADHD and you know you have a hard time, then you have to even work harder to do one task at a time. It is even more important that your environment is conducive to learning because you already have a hard time paying attention. So these are things that are very helpful to people with ADD. Yes. And even when we talk about that, one task at a time for ADD, I would say even further, we need to break down our tasks into very small pieces because people with ADD have a hard time like dealing with the whole chunk. We need to chunk it into very small pieces and focus on one piece at a time in order to accomplish. So yes, this is definitely helpful for people with ADHD. Okay, the A is automatically. And we're going to say, don't do things automatically. And I'm going to explain why. You come into your house, you throw the keys on the coffee table, your hand throws the keys on the coffee table, and where's your brain? Your brain is thinking about what you need to make for supper, who you need to call back, what bill you need to pay, what you forgot to tell your spouse or child or grandchild. So my hand dropped the keys on the coffee table. My brain was somewhere else or in many other places. So my brain was not aligned with my body. So we go like this. Watch my hands. We go like this. Align your brain and your body so that my brain is exactly where my body is. Because if it's not, there's no way you're going to remember where those keys are because your brain wasn't even in the same place as your hand that was putting the keys down. So we're not going to do things automatically anymore. In terms of, in the case of the keys, the only thing that you can do automatically with the keys is if you have a set place. In Hebrew, we say a makom kavua. If you have one place where you put all those keys all the time, it's a hook, it's a place on your counter. If you always put it in the same place and you never have to look for it because it's always there, right? So in that case, I don't mind if you put it on the hook automatically, but it's not automatic because you know exactly what you're doing and where you're putting it because you're putting it in the same place every time so you can find it. But other than having that makam kavu or set place for things, which I do suggest, by the way, because then you can find it easily, we don't want to do things automatically. So that's back to the mindfulness. So instead of just dropping my keys while my head is thinking about what I have to do, I'm aligning my brain and my body, and I'm going to give the task that I'm doing right now 2 seconds of attention, 2 seconds, which means when I put my keys down, I am looking, I'm right here, putting my keys down. I'm not thinking about anything else. So I'm doing one task at a time, and I'm not doing it automatically. I'm actually looking at what I'm doing. And when we get to the S, I'll tell you exactly how to do it. But now I'm just going to give you this fun tip. When you put your keys down or your phone or I'm saying keys, but it could be phone, pocketbook, glasses, anything that you lose all the time. And by the way, the average person spends 16 minutes a day looking for lost items. The average person spends 16 minutes a day looking for lost items. What a waste of time. The tips I'm going to give you today are going to help you with this. So instead of just putting your keys down, now you're going to take 2 seconds and make a mental image of where your keys are. Because why? Our brain thinks in pictures. So if I say elephant, you imagine a huge gray elephant, right? Your mind thinks in pictures. So when I put my keys down, if I imagine a bomb blowing up, or if I imagine a huge bouquet of flowers, big red roses coming out of my keys, in an hour, when I say to myself, now, where are my keys? I'm going to have this mental image pop up of a bomb blowing up or big red roses coming out of my flowers, out of my keys. So that mental image attached to my keys, let's say they're on my coffee table, is going to automatically come to me when I need it. And then I'll have to spend the whole day looking for it. So that image of what you want can be anything. It can be a genie popping out. It could be any image you want. You can get creative with this. And because if you make the image like strong and vivid and funny and out of proportion and actionable, then you'll remember it. So I just changed the whole action now. You don't come in your house and throw your keys down. Now you give it 2 seconds of attention and you make a mental image of where those keys are, okay? So that mental image is very, very powerful. And we can do this to remember almost anything you want. So we're not doing it automatically. We're making a mental image of it now. And we're giving it 2 seconds of attention and intention. The intention is I am going to remember where my keys are, okay? I want to go back to the example of what did I come to the fridge for, which is what I called this talk. When you go to the fridge and open it up and say, what did I come here for? That happens because between when you made the memory, it could be 10 seconds, it could be 20 seconds ago, and when you got to the fridge, what happened in your brain? Your brain went, that thought, that might have had 10, 20, 30 thoughts in the time that you said, I need the milk from the fridge to when you got to the fridge. So we distracted ourselves. Now this happens automatically, right? This is the way our brains will work. They say we have between 60 and 80,000 thoughts a day. That's a lot of thoughts going through our head. So when we want to remember something, we've got to stay focused. So I'm going to give you the really easy solution for the fridge. When you think I need the milk from the fridge, from that point till you get to the fridge, however long that is for you, however many steps it is, say to yourself, milk, 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 milk. What are you doing? You're preventing internal distraction. You're preventing your brain from going in a lot of other directions. So we're preventing the internal distractions so that we stay focused on one task at a time, like I said before. So it's milk, milk, milk till you open the fridge and I know what I came for because I just said milk 3 times. It sounds silly, but it's so simple and it works. So it's keeping your mind focused on the task at hand, preventing the internal distractions. And the external distractions are what we said before, which are the noise, the phone ringing, the dog barking. Now, some people like having noise in the background, but just realize that you might not be focused on what you're trying to do if you have that noise in the background. And there are distractions that we have to deal with, like someone's knocking on the door and we want to go answer the door. But if you're in the middle of something, make a note that you might not remember where you were when you go to open the door. So that's the solution for what did I come to the fridge for. It's just saying it out loud, milk, 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 and repeating it and keeping yourself focused. Now, the best piece of this is the S, okay? Let's just review. The T stands for one task at a time. The E stands for environment, make your environment conducive to learning and remembering. A stands for automatically, not to do things automatically so that you're not paying attention to it, you don't remember it. The S stands for senses, okay? Let's look at under the T's, there's a sentence here I want to read. It says, your senses stimulate the brain. If you use one sense to make a memory, you have a 10% likelihood of remembering it 1 week later. But if you use 4 senses, you have a 97% likelihood of remembering it. Wow. You can go from 10% to 97% chance of remembering it by using your senses. Now, what are our senses? Our senses are seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching. We have 5 senses, and we have the 6th sense, which is like intuition and the feeling, the intuition, the gut reaction. So the more senses we use to encode the memory, the better the chance we have of recalling it, retrieving it. All these words I define when I teach my full memory course, and I'll talk about that later. So senses, you want to use as many senses as you can to encode the memory, because then it's going to be there for you to pull it out later. So how do we do this? I'm going to give you some really, really good examples that I know have come up for most of you. Okay, how can you use your senses to help you remember? So number 1, that you lock the door. Okay, by a show of hands, how many of you have left your house and then wondered later, did I lock my door? Yeah, that happens, right? And we're worried about it, right? We get a little obsessed about it. So how can we use our senses to make sure we lock the door? And this is going to help us with the self-doubt, the did I, didn't I? Oh no, did I turn off the stove? Did I take my medicine? Did I, didn't I? And we get all worked up and panicky about it. So here, this is going to take care of the self-doubt, using your senses. So number 1, that you lock the door. So instead of just leaving your house, talking on the phone, putting the key in, closing the door and leaving, when you have no idea what you just did because you were talking on the phone. So we got to get rid of talking on the phone. That's the multitasking thing. And now what am I going to do? I'm going to feel the key in my hand. This takes 2 seconds. Feel the key. Is it cold or hot? I'm looking at the key. I'm putting it in the lock. I'm turning the lock. I hear the lock click. I take out the key. I'm watching my hands. I'm looking. I'm listening. And I am saying out loud, I am now locking my door. When you say it out loud, you're hearing yourself say it. So in an hour or in 10 minutes, you drive away or you go on the bus and then you say, oh no, did I lock my door? Yes, I heard myself say out loud, I am now locking the door. And then you know you did it. It takes away all that self-doubt and panic. So again, you're looking at your key, you're feeling it, you're using tactile, you're watching your hand turn it, you're listening to the click, and you're saying out loud, I am now locking the door. Saying it out loud is really, really important because you need to hear yourself say it. Now, some of you might be worried. People say to me, oh, but everyone's going to think I'm crazy if I'm talking to myself. First of all, we don't care what anyone else thinks. You are going to remember that you locked your door. And second of all, in this day and age, people have Bluetooths in their ears. A lot of people wear Bluetooths, so they're always talking. You see people walking down the street talking to themselves because they have Bluetooths attached. So you never know who anyone's talking to these days, so it doesn't matter anymore. So you're saying it out loud. I now locked my door. The second example is that you turned off the stoves. This is another very big worry that people have, and there unfortunately have been cases of people, unfortunately starting fires or burning down their houses because they forgot that they had something cooking and they left the house. So we are going to make sure we know that we turned off the stove. How are we doing it? So when you turn off the stove, you look at your hand. Here's my hand. I'm turning off the stove. I'm looking at my hand. I'm watching the fire go out, right? I can see the fire go out. I'm hearing like the cooking to stop, the sizzling, stop sizzling. And then I'm going to move the pot. That's like an action. It's kinesthetic. I'm actually going to take the pot and move it. When you do that, you're doing another action that you're more likely to remember than just turning the button. So when you turn off the stove, you're watching your hand, you're moving the pot, you're hearing the cooking sizzle go down, and you're saying out loud, I am now turning off the stove. So in an hour, you say, oh no, did I turn off my stove? Yes, I heard myself say out loud, I am now turning off the stove. This takes away the self-doubt, it takes away the worry. And usually what happens if you forget to turn off the stove? It's because what you do, you walked away, you allowed yourself to get distracted. And then you quote unquote forgot about it, but you didn't forget. Really what happened is your mind went to something else. You went on to the next task. So we need to keep ourselves very mindful, focused on each task at a time. But the self-talk really helps. It really helps. Okay, another example, that you took your medicine. Okay, good question. Before I go on to the next, someone just put a question. I'll answer this now because it has to do with it. What let's see, it says that's okay the first time, but what about the next day? You may remember that and not today's. Okay, so I get that question a lot. Here's what I think the answer is. Again, the question is, so today I remember that I turned off my stove, but I remember that I did it today or yesterday or 2 days ago or 3 days ago, right? That's the question. So I think the answer to this is that in the memory process, after every stage of memory, which I go through in my course, is like a little garbage can. Imagine like a little garbage can or a little filter. Anything you don't need is gone, right? If someone tells me a piece of information and I have no use for it, no need for it, I let it go because I don't need it. My brain filters it out. We have a great trash can system in our brain. We don't have to remember everything that everyone tells us, right? So we get to filter out and get rid of what's not important. So after I turned off my stove today and the day's over, that's it. I don't need that information anymore. It gets filtered out. Tomorrow is a new memory. We do it again and it's a new memory. I believe that that's the answer and that's how it works. Now, if you want to use you can use different mental images for different things. So let's say one day you can use, a bouquet of flowers to remember where you put your keys. And the next day you could imagine a genie popping out of your keys. So you can use different mental images. But I do believe that whatever your brain doesn't need anymore, it gets rid of, it filters out, it's garbage. So once you don't need the memory, it's gone. So the next example. Oh, okay. Also, great question. Any tips to remember whether or not you counted the Omer the night before? Yeah, that's a great question. And I do think that what we're doing here is going to help that. So let's just do that as an example right now before I do my other two examples. So every night we want to remember that we counted the Omer. So again, why do we forget? Because we weren't paying attention to it in the first place, right? So if you count the Omer and there's noise in the background or someone's talking to you or your phone's ringing and you're not looking in a sitter or on a chart, that memory is not strong. You're not encoding it properly. So if we encode the memory properly, then it's there. It's like, imagine a filing system. Imagine your brain as a filing system. If you put the piece of paper in the right file folder, then when you want it, you can retrieve it. You can go get it. But what if you put the piece of paper in the wrong folder? It's there, but you can't find it. So by doing these, the tips that I'm giving you today to encode the memory properly, it'll make it that it's there for you when you want it. So the Omer, how are you going to remember that you did the Omer? First of all, I usually say out loud, I am counting the Omer now. So everyone around me knows I'm counting and they hear me. I say it out loud. I look at something, either the sitter or the chart or the calendar, something that has the day. And so I'm looking at something. So I'm using my eyes. I'm saying it out loud. If there's someone around, they'll say amen. And then that's another thing. I'm hearing them say amen. So I know I counted. And they also remember that I counted. And that's usually what I do. I say it out loud. I say I'm counting the Omer now. And I look at something like from a text. And then the next step would be a chart. Like there's some years that I use a chart on my fridge or on the back of my door. And every night when I do it, I check it off. And if it's checked off and I say to myself, did I count the Omer? All I need to do is go back and look at my calendar and see that it's checked off. So you can do that as well. And why does that work? Because you're using your tactile sense. You're writing it. It's another thing that you're doing to help you remember it. You're using more senses. When you write it down, when you check it off, you're using more senses. So that's why that works. So that's how I would use these tips to remember that you counted the Omer. And then after I count the Omer and I put the sitter back or I put the chart back, I say, I counted the Omer. And then I know that's it. It's done. That is what I do. Now, if you have other people in your house, you can remind each other. That's always helpful. It's also helpful to have a set time that you do it. So if you're davening Mariv and they count at the end, they usually at the end of Mariv, they count Omer. So that's always helpful to have like that, do it at a certain time. Or maybe you do it right before you go to sleep. Like when you get into bed, you say Shema, whatever your nighttime routine is, you can do it right before you go to sleep. To have a set time that you do it is always helpful because then it's not like, did I tonight? Didn't I? I have too much going on. Or you can do it right before you eat supper, right after you eat supper, depending on what time you eat supper, if it's late enough, depending what country you're in, what time zone. So I think having a set time that you do it, saying it out loud, and also, of course, when you're saying it, like, really paying attention to what night it is, so that, like, I know the number. The truth is, you can even play around with the techniques to remembering numbers with this, but I won't go into that because that's another class, the numbers. Okay, let me just take a look at the chat. I think I answered that question. Let's see. Okay. What about remembering to turn off the cooking if you need to leave it cooking for some time? What if you set an alarm but are for some reason unable to leave the next task when it goes off and then you forget to go back to the pan? Okay, so wait, the question is how to remember to turn off, you need to cook it. So you set an alarm, and sometimes people say when the alarm goes off, I don't know what it was for. So I tell people to combine the auditory and the written reminder. So next to that alarm, you should put a little piece of paper that says, turn off the rice, or check the stovetop, or check the oven. I'm trying to read the question. What if you're set an alarm, but are unable to leave the next task when it goes off and you then forget to go back? Okay, so you're middle something else. Okay, so the question is, you're cooking something for a while, then you go to do something else, and when the alarm goes off, you can't leave the task you're in the middle of to go. So that's a problem because you're gonna forget. You need to either ask someone else to do it or set the timer again so that you remember to go check it again. Or I would make myself a little note. Let's say the timer goes off in the kitchen and I'm in front of the computer. I would actually take a pen and paper and write, in 1 minute, check stove. Because let's say you have another minute, it's not going to burn, but you're in the middle of a task and you don't want to get up right that minute. Write it down. Write a note saying, go check the stovetop in 1 minute or 2 minutes or whatever. I would make a written or another alarm reminder to remind me to check it again, because otherwise you're in the middle of something, you're gonna forget. Okay, another question. How should one practically differentiate between doing things intentionally and doing things by habit? Okay, that's a good question. For example, if I'm driving, I want to be doing things because I know how the car functions and the way I'm going. I don't want to be thinking each step as if it is new. Okay, wait, I'm not trying to understand that question. I understand the question about habit. If I'm driving, I want to be doing things because I know how. Okay, I'm not 100% sure what that question is. Does someone want to clarify, whoever asked it? Yeah, I just closed the chat. Okay, whoever asked that question can clarify it a little bit because I'm just not 100% sure. Habit versus new thinking each time. Okay, so okay, when we do things by habit, so again, this is a problem because sometimes we're so used to doing the same thing over and over. Let's say even davening or counting the Omer. If you just do it by rote, by habit, you're not going to remember that you did it. We actually need to give attention to it. So the same thing like with davening, when it's Rosh Chodesh, how is it that so many of us forget that to add Yalav Yevo in, right? Because we're not paying attention to what we're doing. We're doing it by rote, by habit. So we need to, if it's something that you need to remember, you need to not do it by habit, and you need to actually give it the attention and intention to remember it. If it's something that's easy and it's not like it's a habit, let's say driving a car, a lot of us, it's a habit, right? But what about when it comes to trying to find new direction, right? And trying to get to a new place, then it gets more complicated. So we need to really pay attention to what we're doing. So if you're trying to get to somewhere new, are you going to be able to talk on the phone while doing that? No. Well, you shouldn't be talking on the phone when you're driving at all. We already said that, right? But especially if you're trying to get somewhere new, you're not going to be able to do that while talking on the phone. Now, if you're driving, every day you go to work and you drive the same thing and it's habit, you don't even have to think about it, then that doesn't take cognition, but driving still does. And I didn't mention this before, I'll mention it now. The research shows that people who talk on the phone while driving, they're half a second slower to step on the brakes. Now, half a second might not sound like a long time to you right now, but when you're talking about the difference between like a crash, right, stepping on your brakes to prevent yourself from hitting someone, half a second is a lot. So if you're half a second slower to step on the brakes because you're talking on your phone, That could mean the difference between an accident or not. So you're going to say habit. It's so easy for me. I could do that because it's habit. You can get there automatically, but if it comes to, not having an accident, stepping on that brake quicker, you don't want to be on the phone. If I didn't fully answer your question, you can, at the end, you can ask me more about that. I want to go through these other two examples that I have here. How can we use our senses to know that we took our medicine, right? Every day we take our medicine, and maybe use a pill box. So that's the easy answer, right? If you have a pill box and you take it and then it's not there, you go back and check, it's not there, you took it. But what about people that either don't want to use the pill box or want to remember to take it in the first place, right? So again, we're going to, first of all, you're going to put your pill box in a place where you're going to see it, because if you don't see it, you're not going to take it, right? So some people put it on the table with breakfast, if you're taking it with breakfast, to remind themselves to take it. So it's about, again, making your environment conducive to remembering. If I put my pill box on the table next to my breakfast, I'm going to remember to take it. So that's where that comes in. But then when you take it, you want to look at the pills, you want to feel the pills. You might even think to yourself, what are these pills for? Oh, this is for cholesterol, this is for heart, this is for blood pressure, whatever you take, and just remind yourself what you take it for. Then when you swallow it, you feel it going down your throat. Most pills don't have like a real taste, but you just stop for a second and feel it going down your throat, and then say out loud, I now took my medicine. Okay, I now took my medicine. Later, when you say, oh, did I take my medicine today? Yes, I remember going down my throat, feeling it. All we're doing is giving it a couple seconds of attention. I remember saying out loud, I took my medicine today. To answer the question before that we asked, how am I going to remember if it's today or yesterday or the day before? I take my medicine every day. Again, once you did it and you know you did it, it's gone. You don't need that memory anymore. And you don't need to remember yesterday and 100 days ago that you took your medicine. But we do want to give it 2 seconds of attention today, so that I remember today that I took my medicine. So it's looking at the pills, feeling the pills, tasting, smelling if that's relevant. The smell may or may not be relevant in some of these examples. But you want to use as many senses as possible because they're going to help you remember that you did it. Okay. And then number 4, where did I put things? So again, we did talk about that a little bit, but when I put something down, what am I doing? I'm not just throwing my keys down anymore. Now I'm doing it intentionally. I'm hearing, what am I doing? I'm hearing myself put the keys on the table. I'm hearing the clink. I'm watching my hands put it down. So I'm using my sight, I'm using my hearing, and I can use that mental image of a bomb blowing up or the, flowers popping out. And I'm saying out loud, I put the keys on the coffee table. I put my phone on the night table. I put my money in my pocketbook, whatever it is. Say it out loud really helps. It takes 2 seconds. It's super simple. And when you hear yourself say it, what does it do? It stimulates your brain. The brain grasps or internalizes, or processes that you actually did that. So it's about mindfulness. It's about really giving it the attention that what you're doing, one task at a time, making sure that the environment is conducive, not doing it automatically, and using as many senses as possible. If anyone has any other examples that you want to work this through besides these, we did the 4, we did the Omer. I'm happy to to do this with more examples, but it really, really works. Okay, I'm just going to say, I want to talk just for a couple minutes about me and what I have to offer, and then I'm going to take more questions. So for any of you that are on Facebook, I have a Facebook group, and that is here at the bottom. It's the Cutley. This Cutley is the Memory Matters Facebook group. It's called Memory Matters Tips and Tricks for Midlifers and Seniors. That's the Facebook group. My website is renayudkowsky.com. That's at the very bottom of this. I hope you all could see it, renayudkowsky.com. On there, if you go to my website, you can actually email me from there. You can sign up to my email list. And when you do that, you get a free PDF that shows the difference between normal and abnormal memory loss. So if you say, Rena, this and this is happening, and I'm not sure if my memory loss is normal, this PDF might help you sort that out. So sign up to my email list through my website, and you will get that PDF automatically. So my website is renayudkowsky.com. My email is rena@renayudkowsky.com, Rena with an E. If you have any questions, or let's say after this talk, you think of something that you might want to share with me, but you don't want to say in public, I'm happy to get an email from you. I will respond to you. I also offer free 15-minute consultations. So we can book a time to talk on the phone for 15 minutes. You can tell me what's going on with your memory, and I can tell you if you should see a doctor, or if you should have a memory assessment done by me, or if you should just do one of my programs that might help you. And the last thing I want to say is I have an amazing program going on now called Remembership. Remembership, like remembership. It's a 3-month membership. I've had a lot of people join it in the past few months, and I'm getting like amazing feedback. And it's an evergreen product, which means that it's not live. Evergreen means it's going on all the time. So whenever you join it, it starts. It starts when you join. And every week you get a short video of me talking about tips. The T's that I just taught you are actually 4 other videos in Remembership, but there's 12 videos in Remembership. So it's a video every week, a brain exercise, a fun brain exercise to do every week. And then once a month, we hop on a live monthly coaching call, group coaching call, where the members get on and I answer questions and we talk about the videos and the information, and it's like super fun. So that's called Remembership. And if you just go to my website, you can see all the details about what's in Remembership. It is not the techniques on names, numbers, or lists of items. I save that for my full course, which I'll be offering soon. So if you get on my email list, you will be able to know when I'm offering what. But Remembership is really fun because you can join it at any time. And as soon as you join, it starts, and everyone's at a different point, but it's the coaching calls have been so much fun. There's also a private WhatsApp group that goes along with Remembership, where you can also have access to me and ask me questions whenever you want. So I highly suggest Remembership. You can find out more about it on my website. At the top of my website, it says Remembership. Click on that and you can see all the information. And of course, if you have any questions, just email me. I'm going to stop sharing this now. And I would like to now also look at the chat and just see if there are any other questions in the chat, and then I'll open it up. Do you have advice on remembering people's names? Yes, I have 3 hours of advice on that. I have a master class called You Name It, and it's a 2-part, 3-hour master class that I teach every couple months. It is so much fun. But I'm going to tell you one tip right now for that. That's going to help you with names. When you meet someone new and you want to remember their name, the first thing you should do is make sure you heard it. Because if you didn't hear the name, you can't remember it. And this goes back to the senses that we were talking about, right? So you might say you didn't remember, but it's not that you didn't remember. You didn't even hear it. If I mumble my name, if I say, hi, my name is Rina, you don't hear that. So how are you going to remember it? So first you got to hear it. And then you want to repeat it back to the person. So if I see there's someone here by the name of Ronnie, I'm going to say, hi, Ronnie, how are you? And you're going to say, I'm great. And I'm going to say, Ronnie, where do you live? And you're going to tell me where you live. And then I'm going to say, Ronnie, it's so nice to meet you. And I just said Ronnie's name 3 times. I heard myself say Ronnie's name 3 times. I have a much better chance of remembering his name. So that is just like the quick tip. Then after that, I go into the techniques to actually association and how to remember the name and the face. And we practice it in my master class. So that's not part of Remembership because I like to practice it with people. And when people come on my master class for names, I prove to them that they can remember many, many more names than they previously thought. And it's really fun. But that's the first step. The first step is repeat the name back to the person, and you already have a higher chance of remembering it. So that's a little tip for names. Thank you. The Torah told us about this. We need to make ourselves a pesel techelas, psil techelas. Okay, I think what you mean by that is like something that you can see that stands out, right? Is that what you mean? That's what I'm assuming you mean by that. Okay, if anyone has a live question that they'd like to ask, I'm okay with you unmuting and asking me a question. what I want to do, you know, I'm just to make sure you got it, I'm just going to type into the chat my, hold on. I'm just typing in my website because you pretty much can get everything from my website. RenaYudkowsky.com. You can join my programs. You can email me. And the program is called Remembership. So feel free to email me any questions. Sign up to my email list from there, and you'll get that free PDF of Is My Memory Loss Normal? If you can't figure out how to do it from my website, just email me at Rena@RenaYudkowsky.com, and I'll just add you to my email list manually. Okay, any questions? I'm just trying to, I know a lot of people don't have their screens on, but if anyone wants to put your screen on or unmute yourself to ask a question, now's the time.
Okay. Otherwise, I'm going to thank you, Rena, because that was yet again a fascinating presentation, and you certainly kept us focused and not distracted for this hour. So that's an achievement in itself. And we've also got these tips and tricks to carry forward with us and integrate into our lives. So unless anyone wants to unmute and ask, you know, feel free. Otherwise, we will leave it here.
I'll tell you a funny story while we're just waiting for people to think if they have any questions. One more funny story about this. I was on the phone with one of my friends. I was on my cell phone and she was on her cell phone. We were talking to each other, talking. A couple minutes later, she says to me, Rena, you are not going to believe this. I just spent 5 minutes looking for my cell phone and I was on it. And I burst out laughing. This happened a few years ago and I burst out laughing. I was like, oh, that is just utter distraction. I mean, to be talking on your cell phone and looking for it, where's your brain? Your brain is not focused on the task. She was trying to do too many things at once. Her brain was literally in Honolulu, right? So she's not, just totally unfocused. And then she's going to blame her memory for that. But is it memory? It's not memory, right? It's where is your brain? Is it where your hand and body is? If we bring our brain and our body together, we could stay focused on what we're doing, be more mindful, and also feel calmer. Like, to me, I think one of the best results of all of this focus and concentration stuff is that we can feel calmer with what we're doing. I know that I'm going to do one thing, finish it, and then move on to another. And I'm going to give it my full attention. Now, again, there are times in life where we can't do this, but I think there are more times that we can and we don't realize it because we don't try. So I'm going to give you 2 things to do for homework. One is the next time you forget something, the next time you say, oh, why can't I remember that? I want you to stop and say, did I even pay attention to it in the first place? Did I even focus on it? Right? Let's say you say, why can't I remember where my keys are? I want you to stop, take a deep breath and say, did I even pay attention to my keys when I put them down? And I think you're going to find the answer to be no, like that you didn't pay attention a lot. And then that awareness is going to bring you to use the tips that I just gave. That's the first piece of homework, is to stop and say, did I even pay attention to this in the first place? And the second thing is to, when you have a lot of thoughts going through your head and you feel sort of like ADD or like, oh my gosh, I can't remember what's going on. Again, take a deep breath and just be mindful. Say out loud, I am now going to do one thing at a time. Just simplify. I'm going to do one thing at a time right now. First, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do that. And taking those deep breaths will help you not feel so stressed and panicky by what you're trying to remember. Okay. I hope that is helpful. Let's see. Well, there's one more comment in the chat. How about remembering names of people that you knew in the past? And about remembering names of people that we knew in the past. Okay, should we put it in twice? Okay. So yes, that is a recall thing. And I do have some techniques for that. There's no magic pills for recalling past stuff, but there's a few things you can do. I don't mind going into it for a minute now. But really the techniques are about encoding it properly so that it's there when I want it. But if you're trying to remember something from a long time ago and it's like sort of on the tip of your tongue, right? You have like, I'm like, I know that person's name. What is it? What is it? Why isn't it coming to me? So the first thing you want to do for recall is a deep breath, because we tend to panic, but our brain needs oxygen. So when you have a senior moment or when you can't remember something, the very first thing you need to do is a few deep breaths, really, not 1, 2, 3, or 4 deep breaths, because your brain needs oxygen and you need to feel more calm and centered so that you can remember, because the panic makes it worse, not better, right? So that's first of all. And then what you do is you search your memory bank for any cues that are going to help you come up with that name or piece of information. So for example, let's say I'm trying to remember the name of the lady that I met at the wedding last week. Let's just say I went to a wedding and I met a lady and she told me her name and I'm trying to remember her name. So I'm going to search my memory bank for any cues that are going to come up that are going to help me. So for example, I might close my eyes and imagine what I was wearing. Maybe I'll imagine what she was wearing. Imagine, maybe what we were talking about. And through trying to come up with some of those contextual cues, it might cue me to remember the name. So it's sort of searching your memory bank for any cues or clues that are going to help you come up with it. And then one more thing that I like to talk about is the alphabet search. You could go through the alphabet and go like A, B, C, D. Oh, Devora. And like sometimes an alphabet search triggers the memory, right? So sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. But those are 3 quick tips. One is a couple of deep breaths, because it gets oxygen to the brain, which you need to remember. Searching your memory bank for contextual cues that will help trigger that memory, and the ABC search. So those are just 3 quick tips for recall. Okay, any other last minute things?
I think that's super. It reminds me when I was learning with someone once, and after a while she stopped and said, what you're saying is that Judaism instructs us to be conscious the whole time of where we are and what we're doing. And this is what you're saying about implying it, to our regular daily lives. Just be conscious.
Yeah. Well, exactly. From when we wake up, the minute we wake up, what do we say? We say Moda Ani, right? We don't just like wake up and start our day. We're conscious. First we say thank you Hashem, right, for giving us back our neshama, right, for letting us wake up. And every step of the way, everything we do, it's so true. It's every step of the way we're very conscious. Every bracha we make, the davening, the way we eat. We don't just eat. What do? When we always talk about mindful eating, when we make a bracha, what does that do? It makes you focus on the task at hand, right? So it's a good point. I really like that.
Okay, so thank you very much once again, and wish you well.
My pleasure. Everyone should stay healthy, be well, have a good week, and I'll be happy to answer any questions through email. Be in touch with me, join my programs. I'm happy to connect with you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed.